just want to introduce myself. I'm Tio, and I work at Just Eat. Hopefully, I'm not shouting, but I'm just trying to give you guys energy, because I know you were sat here for a little while. So we are here to do a talk on the journey so far. So we've got 3 panelists. We've got Kwesi, we've got Corey, and we've got Lauren. And they're just going to share their journey, how they came into tech. And then also, there's going to be an opportunity for you guys to ask questions. So make sure you're listening and you have some really good questions for them. So let's start by doing a bit of an intro. I'm a delivery manager, by the way, if anyone cares to know. And I've been doing it for 4.5 years. And Kwesi, would you like to tell us what you do, how long you've been at Jet?
Yep. So my name's Kwesi. I'm a senior data analyst at Just Eat. So I work in the B2B section of Just Eat, and I've only been here just over a year now. So yeah.
And just, sorry, one last question. What's your favorite takeaway?
Ooh, Caribbean. I love Caribbean food. Sweet, spicy, everything. Yeah,
Nice.
That's me all day.
Thank you. Corey?
Yeah, I'm Corey. I have been at Just Eat for just shy of 7 years now. I'm a delivery manager, which is kind of a bit like a project manager, but not really. Yeah, that's me.
Favorite takeaway?
Favorite takeaway, definitely sushi.
And Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I am a machine learning engineer, and I've been at Jet for 3 years. And my favorite takeaway is sushi.
Girl,
Outnumbered.
trying to be me.
What's going on here?
Nice. Okay, cool. So what I want to know is, how did you guys actually get into tech? So let's start the other way around. Lauren?
Yeah, so I studied general engineering at university because I always kind of liked maths and physics, so that seemed like a good choice. And then when I got to uni and I started doing more like practical engineering, I realized that I just didn't like it. I did civil engineering, and it was like lots of talking about soil and lots of talking about concrete, and I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. But we did like a coding course at the beginning of my first year, and I really enjoyed it. So I just started practicing coding like in my own personal time. And then when I got to the end of my degree, even though I sort of hadn't studied software, I thought I could code like decent enough so I might be able to blag a job as a software engineer, and I managed it. So yeah.
Thanks. And Lauren, do you want to just expand slightly about how you actually came into it? Was it through applying for a job in the normal channel? Was it through a grad program? How did you do that?
Yeah, so I applied, in my final year of uni, I applied to the early careers program at Just Eat as a software engineer. So that was like my first tech role.
Thanks. Just as plug, we do have an early talent program that's starting on the 26th of October. So Lauren is a testament to the success of that. So if any of you are interested, we do have a stand back there. Come and speak to us, apply for the role. We've got technical and non-technical roles available as well. Corey?
Yes, my journey into tech has been very random. It was like a very happy mistake. I started at Just Eat 7 years ago in operations, which is like a whole other building even to tech. Never considered it. Was working in operations as a supply chain manager. And one day this guy emails me asking me to help him with something, so I just did that. Helped him, and then a couple months later, an old manager had reached out to me and was like, oh, there's a job in tech, I really, really think you'd be good at it. And I was a bit like, oh, I don't know. Thought, let me just go for the interview, bit of it, like, get my name out there, put my name in the hat, kind of even go to the other office. Go to the interview, and the guy holding the interview was the head of engineering, who's, funnily enough, the guy I'd helped a couple months before. So go to the interview, and it was like, oh my God, it's you. Yeah, it's me. So yeah, went to the interview, like never expecting to get it. Barely could even answer the questions. Like they were asking me a lot of techie questions, didn't know the answer to many of them. And then yeah, got the role. So then I started my career obviously in tech, in engineering. And then in 2020, during the pandemic, and throughout my career at that point, people had said to me, oh, you should be a delivery manager. Like, you'd be really good at it. I didn't even really know what a delivery manager was that much. So during that time, like, I started connecting a bit more with other delivery managers and thought, oh, actually, it sounds all right. It was like heavily project-based, which is kind of a bit like I was doing, but it would take me outside of engineering. A role came up and similar thing. I just thought, let me go for the interview. Like, let me network. Let me put my name out there. Let me let people know I'm even interested. And yeah, got the job somehow again. And yeah, so I've been a delivery manager now for 2 years. I heavily support like networking teams at the minute, and yeah, that's my journey.
So what I would like to echo here is just for anyone that maybe has already started their career and it wasn't in tech and you're not technical, there's still opportunity. There's loads of chances to do that. And Corey's a really good example of that. So she's been at Just Eat for 7 years. And as you can see, she's moved around. It's more about people's aptitude to learn, appetite. You know, networking is super important. So when you're here, make sure that you're doing that. But yeah, it's really interesting to hear the different ways that people can actually get into tech. And it's not always the more traditional route, like degree, for example. So don't count yourself out, basically. If you're already in your career, there's still chances. Cool, so let's hear from Kwesi. Oh, Corey, sorry?
No, I was just going to add to that and say, like, I didn't go to university. Like, I didn't study anything to do with tech. Like, I left secondary school. My highest qualification is actually really a GCSE. And I feel like why I definitely never considered a career in technology is it's like, it wasn't something that was ever put to me as an option. Like, I feel like when you're in school or when you're studying at least, it's like it's very much screamed at you. If you don't study, if you don't do this, you'll never have a good job. Like, you'll have a kind of like a dead-end job. And I just think it's important to let people know that even if you are studying, what you study isn't always necessarily what you end up enjoying or end up continuing to do. And like, I feel like tech is definitely a great industry for like skills and things you're passionate about. Like, if there's something you're passionate about and you're good at, like, don't count yourself out of that.
Yeah, question.
Okay, cool. Yeah, how did I get into tech? So I've had a really like varied career. So I studied economics in uni, financial economics. I came out of uni, it was like the whole world crashed. It was 2008 or something. Oh no, 2000, I can't remember. But yeah. And then couldn't get a job. And then I fell into project management. So I started doing that for a while. Didn't like it. And then I applied for a job, which is just basically, oh, can you use Excel? And I was like, yeah, I can. So I applied for it. It was all the way down in Kent. I used to drive all the way down there, come back. And then I slowly started learning about data. And then before I knew it, you know, you start picking up SQL, you change jobs here and there. And before you know it, Python comes up. And yeah, somehow I ended up at Just Eat. So yeah, it's kind of been interesting. Like, I think once I got into tech, the whole world just opened up. And I just saw like a whole world of possibilities. And I was like, this is where I belong. And that was it, yeah.
Amazing, thank you.
Cool.
So I guess what we can learn from Kwesi, seeing as we're learning something from everyone, is definitely what you study doesn't define you. There's still opportunities to move across. And I guess just be brave and be bold and just try new things and be willing to learn as you go, because he's an example of that happening. And now he's a senior data analyst, which is really cool. All right, so let's move on to the next question. What was your biggest misconception about tech before you joined? Corey, I'll start with you.
Well, I had many, obviously, because it just wasn't a thing I ever thought about doing. I definitely thought I would have to be like degree level educated. I definitely just, even now sometimes, like we talk a lot about at work, a lot about imposter syndrome and like sometimes feeling a little bit out of your depth. And I even feel like that sometimes now, but like I said, when I was in school, I feel like the only careers you really ever hear about are like being a lawyer, being a doctor, and like tech when I was in school definitely wasn't a thing people were like talking about. It wasn't a career path. And I feel like once I got into tech, the misconception that I had to be degree level educated was like totally blown out of the water for me. Like there are a lot of people, like we were talking earlier about, as a lady in my team, and she was the receptionist at Just Eat. That was the beginning of her journey, and now she's a delivery manager. And I feel like Just Eat is a great company where the lust for knowledge or any sort of passion you have and any interest you have is definitely a great company for that to be explored, and they advocate for it.
Thanks. Kwesi?
Yeah, biggest misconception. Yeah, I think I agree with Corey. Like, I think there's just a perception that it's difficult to get into, but there's so many like free courses, YouTube, like you can literally like join a company doing one thing and like talk to developers, talk to whoever you're working with, and like they'll be more than willing to help you in most occasions, I guess. But I think that's the first thing for me, and then the second thing I think is like when people hear the term, oh, like I'm an engineer, or I'm a developer, or I'm this, I'm that. I think once you're in and you know what it is you're looking for, it's so easy to like make your way around if you're willing to be disciplined and consistent, and have like a willingness to learn, know when you're wrong. I think that's the best thing for me. Yeah.
Thanks, Lauren.
Can I add one? Another thing I feel like when people say tech, I just feel like everyone envisions like coders and you like in a dark room, like on your laptop, like punching all these crazy numbers and like knowing everything to do with tech and hey, you've studied computer science, and there's so many different type of careers in technology that don't require you to necessarily be the most tech savvy, technological person. Like, I think even being a delivery manager is very much like a testimony to that of that the core of it is very much like project management. And I think there's a lot of people that would never consider that that's a tech career.
Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, similar to that. I think my biggest misconception was maybe like specifically in machine learning, I guess, what a machine learning engineer looks like. Like I thought that, I think people often have a stereotype of this sort of like male nerdy types, like Corey was describing, that like sit in their dark hole and don't talk to anyone. But actually I realized like the things that I thought would make me stick out, like me, like being maybe really chatty or like really friendly, like actually that's actually quite valuable as a machine learning engineer, because, you know, we can't just work on our own and we have to work with other teams. And like, I think things that I thought would hold me back and thought would make me stick out, maybe did make me stick out, but in a good way. So yeah, I think that was like my biggest thing, was actually just sort of realizing that actually like, it's fine that I don't look like a machine learning engineer, whatever that means.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think one thing that draws me to tech is you can be whoever you want. Like, you can be yourself. You can dress how you want. You can grow your locks. You can wear whatever you want. And like, it's so free in that way. And if you be yourself, everyone will accept you as you. And I think that means a lot to me. So yeah.
It's amazing. Cool. So what I would like to do is give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions. I do have some in my back pocket, if you guys don't. But it would be really good to get for you guys to have the opportunity to ask. So I believe there's a mic. Is there a mic? Yeah? Okay, amazing. Does anyone have any questions for the panelists that you're dying to know? Oh, there's one over there.
Oh, we got one.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Nyasha. My question is for Lauren specifically, but more than happy to hear from the other panelists. What would you say to some other young people, maybe a couple of like years back and a couple of years like behind in their journey? Like, what's the most crucial thing that you think has got you to the heights that you've reached today?
I mean, I guess it's interesting that you say behind, because I think like in tech, I think compared to other industries, you have quite a lot of career switches. Like, so many people that I work with have had these past lives that like were nothing to do with tech. And I think because tech is changing so much, you're not really behind, because like everyone who works, like everything is constantly changing. So everyone who works in tech is constantly kind of like upskilling. So if you're not in the industry, you're not as far behind as maybe you think you are. So I'd say like never let that be a barrier. I think that's really important. Is like I think historically in tech there's been like a lot of gatekeeping, because I think when you work in tech it's nice to think that you're special and a genius and you're like you're the only person who can do this job, but actually it's like a lot more accessible than I think the wider tech industry likes to make it. So I guess I think like don't let your own misconceptions be a barrier. Like, just try it.
So while we wait for the next question, I think it would be good to hear from Corey and Kwesi as well, because I had a similar question, which would be, what advice would you give somebody who's trying to get into tech?
What advice? I think once you know that you want to get into tech and you've got a role that you think suits your quality, so it could be a delivery manager, it could be a product manager, it could be a developer, software engineer, whatever it is. I think the key would be, for me, would be consistent and be disciplined in your learning. So don't just try and code for one day or like learn how to code for one day and then take 3 days off. And then, oh, do you know what, I'll do it next week. Just like try and be consistent, even if you're doing a free course or like learning on YouTube, whatever it is. Just be consistent, be disciplined, half an hour every day. And before you know it, you'd have picked up so much to pass interviews, so much to do, like pick up projects online and like put yourself out there. And like, yeah, I think those are the two things. Just be consistent and be disciplined, I think, yeah.
Thanks, Corey.
I feel like my answer's a bit cliche, but based on like my journey, I would just say, number one, networking. Like I feel like it's such a invaluable thing and people kind of underestimate it, and I feel like just the word networking makes you think like, what am I meant to do? Just like, go out and talk to people, but like kind of, yeah, like you never know who's who and you never know who will remember you, and like that's just obviously always stuck with me because of how I fell into tech. Like knowing people it is such a, like, there's that cliche thing you see on like socials, like your network is your net worth. Like it's half true. It's half true. Like who you know is such a powerful thing, and like the impression you leave behind is so important. Like I can't express that enough. So yeah, I feel like my biggest advice would be that do dope networking. Like coming to things like this is such a dope thing to do. You meet so many people, and yeah, I would say the consistency thing. Like I feel I've always said, in any role I've had, like passion breeds consistency. It breeds a great work ethic. So if there's something you're passionate about and it's something you actually enjoy, like just, I mean, it's instantly going to be easier to be consistent in it, right? But like stick with it and don't let any door that gets shut like deter you from what you want to do.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Are you ready for your question? Amazing.
So my question is, like, what are the things that you can say to like stand out in an interview, like key things that you would say, or like how you would present yourself, or even like just like your mannerism, like how would you like, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. I've actually been on both sides of the table. I've held interviews and I've been in interviews. And I, when you're saying mannerisms, it's hard, isn't it? Like you want to be yourself, and then I feel like sometimes we have these kind of like, I don't know what word to use, but mannerisms that you feel don't fit in the workplace. But being yourself is obviously very important. You always want to be professional as well. But I think the biggest thing for me when I've held interviews and been in interviews is, number one, being yourself, and number two, like expressing your, like, I feel like it's important for people to say their work ethic and kind of try and really get that across, because sometimes you could be an interview that you're technically not qualified for, like on paper, and that's totally fine. Like everyone should, you know, they say apply for the job you want like 10 years from now, like yeah, do that. But I think expressing that you've got a great work ethic and like you take pride in a job well done, and like those kind of things for me always have stood out in interviews. Like I've definitely had people that on paper shouldn't get the job, but to me it's like they just seem like a special individual that's going to come in and work hard. They've got a lust for knowledge and a lust for what they want to do. So why deny them that opportunity? Because probably they're going to be more valuable in that role and reach higher heights than someone that's just here because on paper this is where I should be, and it's not even where they really necessarily want to be. So yeah, that would be my biggest bit of advice, like interviewing.
Yeah, I would say similarly, like actually I think communication, I think in the times that I've been in interviews, there have been people on the other side where people who are like technically qualified, but it was like getting blood out of a stone. Like it's so hard to understand them. And actually, I think even if you're like missing knowledge and stuff, I think as an interviewer, being able to like understand clearly where someone's at actually goes quite a long way. So I think just practicing interviewing and like practicing explaining yourself will make that easier, because it's a hard thing to do. But I think that definitely goes a long way when it comes to like recruiting.
And I think as well, like, never be scared to be like, I don't know. Like, like, when I went for my role, they were asking me questions, and I genuinely had to be like, I don't know. I would have to learn that. Like, I would have to learn that, and I'm willing to. So there's no, like, no one knows everything. And I feel like sometimes you go for a job interview and you're made to feel, or like, just the world makes you feel like you're meant to know everything. You're meant to know what you want to do. You're meant to know the answer to every question, and it's just not reality. Like, you're not going to walk into an interview, maybe, if that is the job that you want, and know how to do that job the minute you walk into it. Like, you're going to probably have to learn something, and that's, like, totally fine. And I think being confident enough to say that says a lot about you as a person anyway. Like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah, interviews. I think it's important to remember, like, for me anyway, like, it's a two-way thing. So as much as they're interviewing you, you're trying to see whether the job works for you as well. And I like to ask, like, I'm practical, so I like to ask questions like that, sort of answer their questions of whether I'm fit for the job, but in a way they're telling me about the role. So, like, I don't know, what are the most important characteristics of the most successful people in your team or something like that. So then they're telling you what it takes for the role to be successful, and then you piggyback off that and be like, oh, actually, I'm good at this or I'm good at that, and then you stop ticking their boxes. So you have to remember it's a two-way thing. I think that's my advice. Yeah.
Thanks. So what I got from that was authenticity, be yourself, and that's really important, actually, because if you present somebody other than yourself when you actually do start the role, and this has actually happened, guys. So I've interviewed as well, and you get people who present a completely different person, and when they start, you're like, where was that person that we saw in that interview room? They're just not who they were, and it's not the right thing for the person or for the team. So the best thing to do is to be authentic, to be honest. If you don't know something, be honest about it, and also make sure it's the right fit for you. Like, not every job is right for you. Not every environment is right for you, so you need to test that as much as they're interviewing you. So yeah, that's really useful. Thanks, guys. Any other questions? Oh, yeah?
Hi. Yeah, I've got a question for Kwesi. What hard technical skills or maybe programming languages would you say is important to become a successful business analyst or data analyst?
Okay, it's a good question. So I'd say in my role, like being an analyst or a data scientist, I'd say SQL is probably like the key thing. I think once you learn that, you've got a really solid foundation for anything. Because anything you can do with Python, you can do with, well, I'm talking about my role, like you can do with SQL. It's just that Python makes it easier to query outside of like database. But I'd say get your SQL foundation really solid. Like, make sure you're really good at that. And then after that, you can pick up the Python, pick up the R, and like you can also make sure your statistics are strong, like understand your basics there as well. But I would get SQL first, and I think it's, compared to Python, for me anyway, I think it's a lot easier to learn. So once you have that, you're literally gold dust, I think, for me, anyway.
So, Kwesi, what about any courses that you've done? Can you recommend any good SQL courses that maybe...
Yeah, so like, you can even go on YouTube, but I think one thing you can do is sign up to a couple of things. So like, there's websites where you can have like SQL questions that all these big tech companies have, and you can practice your SQL there. But I would sign up to things like DataCamp, Udemy, and there's so many of them nowadays. Like, literally just pay, I think it's like £10 or something like that, or have a trial. And then once you pay for it, you can literally practice all day. And like I said, just be disciplined, be focused, make sure you complete the course. The number of times I've started a course and I'm like, I get halfway, I'm like, ugh. But if you start and make sure you finish, give yourself a deadline, give yourself like a timeline, and then practice, right? It's one thing to like do a course and then you're not practicing it. After a couple of weeks, you might forget. But like, start practicing. Sometimes do a bit of a course practice, and then before you know it, like, you'll be just as good as anyone. Yeah. Cool.
Cool. Okay, any other questions? We have a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question. What's your best advice for the people that take the self-study route and how not to get overwhelmed with all different informations?
Did you guys get that?
No, I didn't. Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah.
My question is, what's your best advice for someone who goes through the self-study route? Like, if I'm doing something else and I decide to go into tech, like, what's your best advice for me and how do I not get overwhelmed? Like, something like that.
I would say picking up like personal projects. So if you learn something new, like if you learn about like how to do API development, maybe like make a little app where you've created an API. I know this is very specific, but like because doing like reading is useful, but like doing is more useful when it comes to learning stuff. So yeah, I would do a little project, and it doesn't have to be amazing, but you can like put it on your GitHub if you've got a GitHub set up, and then I always have a link to my GitHub in my CV. So like if you've written about something in your CV, a recruiter can then like see there's evidence of you actually having used it. But for me personally, like when it comes to self-studying, personal projects was like the easiest way for me to learn.
I would agree with that. I think, like, if you're an analyst or a data scientist, I think, like, there's Kaggle. I think like, you have like loads of exercises, and there's a whole community of people like working on this. So set up a Git account, and then once you work on something over a weekend, it takes you a week, whatever, just put it on your GitHub and then keep doing that. So you're actually practicing, you're getting feedback in that community. And then, like, I think Corey touched on this, like networking is another thing. So there's loads of people who are in the same space as you. Don't ever think you're alone, like, who are willing to help or like give you advice or like, oh yeah, I remember I went through that. This is what I did. So yeah, that would be my advice, I think.
Thanks. I think I saw someone saying it's time up. So thank you guys so much for your time. You can find us on D5, I believe we are. If you have any more questions, connect with us on LinkedIn. More than happy to help answer questions. And yeah, just be you. And thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.